What is up guys, Jarv here, back today jumping into Destiny 2. Now in today's video we're taking a look at the Palindrome. In our video today we're taking a look at all the perks, weapon stats, but more importantly the best way to farm it this week. So if you've not been able to get your hands on that god roll, then be sure to stick around and enjoy the video. If you do enjoy the video, be sure to leave a rating down below. That super helps me out here on the channel. Or if you're new here and you want to keep up to date with all the latest Destiny 2 content, be sure to hit subscribe as well. But without further delay guys, let's jump into the video. Now, with the launch of Season of the Chosen, we had a batch of new weapons added this season. Now, this consisted of some brand new weapons entirely, but also some reprised weapons from Destiny 1. Now, out of those reprised weapons, they are some firm fan favourites. These include the Swarm Machine Gun, the Shadow Price Auto Rifle, and the weapon that we're covering today, the Palindrome Hand Cannon. Now, these have been added as Nightfall exclusive rewards, and they rotate on a weekly basis. Last week we had the Shadow Price available, and this week we have the Palindrome once again. Now, I've put some serious time into trying to farm out the PvE god roll that I want, which is Outlaw and Rampage, and as you can see from the ones that I've got currently in my inventory, I sadly haven't been able to get it just yet. But the best and the closest that I've been able to get to it is this one, and this one has ricochet rounds, Outlaw, and high impact reserves. Ideally, I want to replace that high impact reserves with Rampage to get a full replacement for the original Midnight Coup. Now, much like some of the other Nightfall exclusive weapons, the Palindrome has some great perk choices available to it. So regardless of whether you're looking for the PvE or PvP role, or just something to fit your playstyle in general, we're going to break down each individual weapon perk, but also the overall weapon stats too, and how this compares to every other 140 hand cannon that you may have in your inventory. Now, in terms of the weapon itself, it's an adaptive frame, so it has a well-rounded grip, is reliable and sturdy. It sits in the energy slot and delivers void damage, and it's 140 rounds per minute. Back in Destiny 1, it was one of the most popular hand cannons available, and that is still very much the case here in Destiny 2. So that's a quick look at the weapon frame and what slot it sits in, but actually what perks can you get on this weapon and what sort of roles should you be chasing? Well, in the first tier we have some very interesting and unique choices available on this weapon. The first one at the top here is called Subsistence, and this is where kills partially reload the magazine from reserves, but your reserves capacity is reduced. Now, as long as you can get those kills, which for the most part in a 140 rounds per minute hand cannon on low tier rank and file enemies will be 1 taps to the head, this should allow you to get regular kills to continually refill your magazine. It's a very good PvE perk, so one not to be slept on, especially on this weapon. Next up we have Quick Draw, where this weapon can be drawn unbelievably fast. Not so much a PvE role, more one for PvP, as having a light and snappy hand cannon can be the difference between winning or losing those 1v1s. Next up we have Overflow, and this is a very popular PvE perk, and this is where picking up special or heavy ammo will reload the weapon beyond its normal capacity. Once again, a very strong perk, one that will allow for very large magazines, allowing you to handle large groups of adds and rank and file enemies with very little effort. Next up we have Killing Wind. This is where final blows grant increased mobility, weapon range and handling for a short duration. Very much a PvP perk this one, and will pair perfectly with some of the perks in the final column, which we'll cover shortly. Next up we have a brand new perk introduced this season called Bottomless Grief, and while you're the last living member on your fire team, each takedown will refill your magazine. So similar to Celerity in Trials, this is one for PvE though, a very situational perk, and one that I personally feel won't see much use. And lastly, we have Outlaw, and this is where precision kills greatly decrease your reload time. This is a personal favourite of mine, excellent on hand cannons like this, as it keeps the weapon's downtime to a minimum, meaning you can get back into the action as soon as possible. So as you can see, there's not too many perk options available on this weapon. In fact, there's only 6 available in each of these trait trees, meaning that your chances of getting a good roll are slightly higher than say the bottom dollar, which is not only a very rare weapon, but also has a very large perk pool. Now moving on to the final column, once again we have some great options too. Now the first one here is called One for All, a brand new one introduced with Beyond Light, and this is where hitting 3 separate targets will increase your damage for a moderate duration. Very good for large groups of adds, and on a hand cannon particularly, this can help you increase your damage to deal with those harder combatants. So definitely a top tier perk, and one not to be slept on at all. Next up we have Thresh, and this is where killing combatants with the weapon will generate a small amount of super energy. A very good perk indeed, especially for PvE, but a personal preference for me is something that increases your overall damage output. So something like One for All, or the up and coming perk in the list here called Rampage. But before we move on to Rampage, we have Unrelenting, and this is where rapidly defeating targets triggers health regeneration. Guardians and powerful combatants count as more than one kill. Again, a very situational perk, one that personally doesn't proc too often for me. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on this perk down in the comment section below. Is this one that you'll want on your Palindrome hand cannon? Going back to Rampage, which is next in the list, this is where kills with a weapon will temporarily grant increased damage and stack up to 3 times. Almost a perfect pairing on a hand cannon like this. You can pair it with something like Outlaw, which gives you the Midnight Coup roll, and being able to stack weapon damage means you can deal with those more powerful combatants with relative ease. Now the penultimate perk, and very much a PvP perk, is Rangefinder, and this is where aiming with the weapon will increase its effective range and zoom magnification. Now this is almost a perfect partner with something like Quick Draw or even Killing Wind if you're looking for the ultimate PvP role. And last but by no means least, we have the High Impact Reserves, and this is where rounds at the end of the magazine deals more damage. Now very much a slept on perk, this one, especially on hand cannons. In fact, if you get this down to the final rounds of your magazine, you do have 2-tap potential on something like a hand cannon like this. But it's a high risk, high reward maneuver, as you'll likely run out of ammo if you don't hit those 2 final shots. Not one that I will personally try myself, but be sure to let me know your thoughts on it down in the comments below. So that's a breakdown of the weapon frame, the perks and some of the roles that you should be chasing, but what's the best way to get your hands on it? Well, Insight Terminus is the Nightfall this week. 1330 Nightfalls are the best way to get them, as they provide a very common source for the Nightfall exclusive weapons, and on top of that, if you can get a platinum medal by taking out all the champions throughout your runs, you further increase your rewards upon completion. Now right now you can get up to 12 guardians in a fire team for various activities. With this particular activity though, on Insight Terminus, it seems to limit you to just 9. Now 9 is still a very high number of guardians in a single fire team and helps you make light work of a very difficult activity. If you can get a full team together on a regular basis, you can easily get these runs down to 8 or 9 minutes per run. Gives you excellent opportunity to get the hand cannon, but also those very important end game upgrade materials. So we've covered the weapon frame, the perks and roles you should be chasing, and the best place to get it this week. But how does the Palindrome compare to every other 140 RPM hand cannon? Well, if we bring up the weapon stats, we can also see the hidden stats. If you haven't seen these before, you can find them over on light.gg. The link to that website is down in the comment section below, and you can gain access to all the weapons, roles, and traits from that site. So I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't used it already. But as you can see from the stats here, the recoil pan on this hand cannon is almost entirely vertical. It's got a recoil stat of 98, making it a very stable weapon to use. Aim assist is quite high once again at 79, one of the highest available in the archetype. Now if we compare this to all the other popular 140 RPM hand cannons, we have things like the Dire Promise, the Old Fashioned, the Ancient Gospel, the Nature of the Beasts, but also Waking Vigil, which was also reprised this season. Now as you can see from the weapon stats across the board, the Palindrome comes out on top pretty much across the board most of the time. It's only really the handling and reload speed on the Waking Vigil that has a noticeable improvement over the Palindrome. But the key stats to be aware of are things like range, stability, and handling. And range and stability are two of the things that the Palindrome has in a plenty. And if you combine these solid stats with the very solid perk pool that it has available, then you'll have one of the best hand cannons available in the game in your hands. And on top of this, the Palindrome can drop also as an Adept weapon. Adept weapons are only available from the Grandmaster Ordeal. These go live on the 16th of March, and these provide a +3 to all these stats across the board, as well as a +10 to a specific stat, things like range, stability, handling, or reload. So if you want the best god roll with the best stats, you're going to need to jump into Grandmaster Ordeals once they go live. So there we have it guys, a comprehensive look at the Palindrome hand cannon, all the traits, stats, sources, but also where you can get your hands on that Adept version. Now if you have enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a rating down below, that super helps me out here on the channel. Or if you're new here and you want to keep up to date with all the latest Destiny 2 content, be sure to hit subscribe as well. I'm going to jump back into the game as always guys, but I will catch you all again very soon.